Hey now, welcome to the Dirty Side of the Track, America's leading Formula One podcast. I'm Brian, that's Rob. There is no race this week, so we have an interesting episode to cover for you, and Rob's going to explain what we're going to do.
You've gone big early there and set some expectations. This
It's
might
good.
not work out, but thankfully, when it's an off week and not back to back, the news tends to ratchet up a little bit. So we've got kind of a bit of a bumper crop of news and social. Brian's been busy stocking the video vault with some videos, so that will be normal. Returning listeners, new listeners, that is all going to be as normal. Then we get to the meat of the episode where, let's be honest, even come yesterday, we were still scratching around at quite what we were going to do. And then it kind of dawned on us. We've been giving Checo a bit of a hard time recently. He's been our pits a few times, and I think it's because we're both Checo fans. We don't like to see where he is. So we decided to check in on Checo and have a look at the stats, have a look at the season. Is he really deserving of all of the abuse that he's getting? And we're going to make our dirty side opinion as to whether he should be allowed to keep that seat or not. And then we've got a Qatar preview, which will be light because there's not exactly a whole heap of history to talk about there. But we'll find a way of stretching it out. I already said to my wife when I was coming down to record the show, she said, "I'll still see you in about 2 hours then." I was like, no, this one isn't going to be as long as that. But
Oh, man.
let's jump into the news and social. And talking of women, Jessica Hawkins made a test debut for Aston Martin this week. She did 26 laps of the Hungaroring in the Aston Martin, the AMR 21. So that's the year before last's car, right?
Yep. I think that's great. I love seeing...
Awesome.
The same way we root for the W Series, which now we root for the Academy, the same way we go cheer on man or woman in motorsport. You know, it doesn't matter to me. I like to see people go around track, and the faster and better they're at it, then great. And we don't give women enough opportunity to get into the sport. So I love seeing this. And Jessica is supposed to be an amazing driver. I've never seen her in person, but we cheer her on social. And so this was great to see.
And am I right that HOTA this year is going to be the first time that the Academy is a support race for F1, so they'll actually get TV coverage?
I think so.
Messed that up?
No,
I'm
at least earlier in the year, I remember reading that. I don't know if it's stuck, meaning I don't know if it's still the schedule, but that had been the plan a while ago. So I hope it still is.
Yeah, I hope so as well. Do we need the rumor mill fired up for this one, Brian?
I'm happy to. Are you ready? I'm
I
gonna put
will
you in the chopper right now.
Excellent. Oh, it's a bit dizzying up here, but anyway, reporting above the rumor mill, McLaren is apparently set to embark on an ideas exchange with Toyota. Not really sure what an ideas exchange is, but rumors apparently starting to swirl that Toyota are eyeing like another F1 comeback. They left back in 2009, and apparently McLaren have announced that Toyota factory driver. Oh, why did I start this one and not give it to you, Brian? Ryo
You know how
Hirakawa.
good I am at names.
I'll go for Rio Hirakawa. Yeah, okay, whatever. Is part of reserve drive roster for 2024. Also, the Toyota chairman. Oh my gosh,
Akio
Toyoda.
Yeah.
Yes. Was with McLaren last weekend at the Japanese GP. So they're putting all these pieces together, and it's all blatantly obvious that Toyota are coming back.
We're working Ouija boards here to put this together.
Well, this isn't me. You know, I've pulled this out of the news. This was actually doing the news rounds of a number of different establishments picked it up. So it's not me with my tinfoil hat on. But I think you picked up the next one, Brian. F1 TV could be in trouble.
I am excited about this one. Again, this is also a rumor, but I don't want to reuse the chopper too frequently because it burns a lot of gas. And so Business F1 magazine picked this up, and then it went wild on social media over the last 2 days. Apple is eyeing Formula One as its next big sports investment. The company is reportedly considering an offer worth about $2 billion with a B per year, which would eventually make Apple the exclusive streaming rights holder of F1 racing. Obviously, there are deals to run out first. They know that. But they've watched the success of MLS Season Pass. I didn't know that was successful on Apple TV and Apple TV Plus, but good for them. And so they're looking to kind of continue in that area. And our friend of the pod, Vincenzo Landino, has been covering this a lot on LinkedIn and on Twitter. And I've watched his news and notes on this. You know what? I don't know how to take this, right? Like, part of me says good, great, but as long as we're getting the races, I don't really care where I have to go for it. You know what I mean? As long as I don't have to pay like a lot extra
So
for it.
I mean, this would be streaming, right? So it would. The way I'm reading this is that ESPN, because they've got the deal forever, would carry on broadcasting it through TV, through cable, and
Until
then
their
F1
deal
TV would.
ends.
Yeah, but I feel like they say streaming, so I imagine this is going after the F1 TV space, where that would cease to exist, and Apple would do it. And I'm with you, right? That F1 TV app is cool. I love the way that I can go to all the different drivers on boards. It works really, really, really super well. But of all the tech companies out there to come in and take it over, I kind of trust Apple to do a good job of that. I mean,
Yeah.
Apple TV is a good user interface compared to some of the ones that manage to mess it up. Looking at you, Peacock. But yeah, I mean, as long as they don't like jack it up so it's ridiculously expensive, I don't see a downside to this unless you happen to work for F1 TV, because I guess that's the thing that goes away.
And I think, though, they are looking to target when the deals end, they would take over exclusivity, is the way I read it as well, to broadcast races. Now, that would be different, but that's what we're watching now with like Prime. You want to watch a Thursday night game, it's on Prime and Prime only. So it's not on anything else. And we removed the NFL Sunday ticket exclusively to YouTube TV. So, we're seeing these types of things move away from terrestrial cable, which is fine.
Yeah.
The only downside is, I'll just say this really fast. We cut the cord years ago. Like, all right, we're going to save some money. Here we go. And all we need is internet, and then we're good to go. And it worked for like a year. And then the price of everything went through the roof, and then everything fractured. And now I have every streaming service known to man. We don't miss one. We actually don't have Peacock, so that's the one we don't have. We got Hulu.
I wouldn't bother.
We got Netflix. We got Prime. We got Motor Trend. I got YouTube TV. I pay for premium YouTube. At this point, I'm pretty certain that like I pay 4 times as much I used to pay, because now I have to have every different streaming service to put together the stuff I used to have in cable. So thank you, Brian. You did a great job.
Spending a lot of money. Not like Aston Martin.
Yes.
They have posted a £53 million, which is more in dollars, but I can't do the mental arithmetic. £53 million loss for 2022. That's an increase in deficit, which that always hurts my brain. It's an increase in going down. But anyway, increase in deficit of around 9 million compared to the previous year. What I love about any news story that comes out like this is the Facebook or Twitter accountants that come out and start acting like they know how all this financial stuff works. And then nobody has any mercy around these topics. Because like somebody came out and said, oh yeah, it's because they spent all that money on the new facility that they've got. And then all the people start wading in going, no, that's a capitalization. They can amortize that over blah, blah, blah. Oh my God. Let's just all admit it's a lot of money they lost, but it's kind of business. They're doubling down and they're investing in the future. So at the moment, they're not making more than they spend.
£53 million, honestly, in a year doesn't sound all that terrible. Is that
It
horrible?
doesn't, and it's got to be pocket change for Stroll,
Right.
surely.
Exactly.
He carries 60 million in his back pocket all the time.
I would assume. I mean, come on. It's not great, but it's not the end of the world by any stretch. There was a huge conversation about F1 and its place in social media, and has it declined? And there are stats. Rob, I'll let you kind of cover some of the stats that show maybe they declined, but then F1 said maybe we haven't, and then people went to viewership, which is still up for some races. So it's like, what really matters? I mean, what did you take from this?
I took from this is a good old classic of statistics will tell you anything you want them to say, right? So BuzzRadar published a 23-page report, of which I have not read a single page, asking the question, have we reached peak F1? And they said that the lack of a title fight in 2022 has seen F1 mentions dropping 70% in the first 5 months of the season, new followers down 46%, and the social reach down 64%. They've also seen an uptick in negative context, with words such as annoying and boring featuring way more. I didn't realize that many people listen to Brian on the pod, but
Ouch. I thought it would say lull in there as well when I start talking.
Lull's gone up on the social media. So, okay, so they've published this the end of the world is nigh type report around F1. And F1 have come back and gone, whoa, hang on a minute there, Sonny. Our figures show that follower growth across the official FOM channels in 2023 is up 757%, and 8 times growth. Now, on one hand, we've got some people saying there's a decline. They're hitting back with, not like they're going to dispute the amount of decline, or there's actually been a marginal increase. They're going, whoa, have a look at these numbers. Times. but okay. Um, F1 are reporting 3.7 million new followers, while BuzzRadar was saying that they only had 489,000. So
That's a big
that's a lot of
difference.
new followers to just have lost somewhere, right?
Right.
But I don't know. Does anyone care?
Nope.
Like, it's like we still watch the races, and I don't really care how many people kind of happen to mention
I
the
mean,
F1 tag on. I mean, obviously it does matter, right? It does matter in terms
right.
of eyeballs on the sport and bringing new fans and all this kind of stuff. But kind of a public, he said, they said, type back and forth on figures. It's like, whatever.
I agree. I agree 100%. And it is interesting, right? We have talked a little bit about this with guests, especially journalists, over the last few years about what is F1 in America? What does that look like? And we kind of were trying to talk about, is there a peak, right? What does success look like? Is there a saturation point or a tipping point where the growth starts to slow, whether it's from Drive to Survive or any of the other areas that are making F1 cool in the States? And this feels very similar in terms of that wave, right? Is there a wave, and will it slow or recede at some point, whether it's social media across the globe, American fandom? I mean, we haven't even gotten to Vegas yet. And so I'm kind of curious to see what happens the rest of the year. Obviously, COTA is still in front of us, but Vegas is the big one, right, that they're adding to the calendar. We got another month and a half to that thing.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you're right. There's going to be Drive to Survive. It created a natural kind of ripple effect in the pond where it was popular, people wanted to know about it, social reach goes up, blah 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 blah. But this whole kind of, I don't like this whole hanging it on. Oh, because there's been no lack of title fight this
Oh,
year.
yeah.
Like, well, hang on a minute. Like, I haven't even gone back and looked at it all yet, but I could probably say hand on heart from what this century alone. So the last 22 prior to this year's title fights, not a whole heap of them have gone down to the last race of the season.
No.
You know, Abu Dhabi did, obviously. We remember that one. Maybe was back in like 2015, 2016, maybe went to the last couple of handfuls. Maybe was Rosberg quite near the end before he won it?
Yeah, and then
I don't really remember this. So this whole kind of, I don't like
Kimmy
the narrative
in that one.
of,
There was a three-way Kimmy,
yeah, it could have
Nico,
been.
and I think, and then gosh, I can't remember. But I agree with you. It's not because of the last couple of years.
Right. Okay. I wouldn't say we don't like to promote other pods because, of course, we do. We have people on, we
Yeah,
happily promote. But this
always.
one, I'm going to go over the top and promote, which is if you haven't listened to the Beyond the Grid podcast this week, where they interview Adrian Newey, then, well, I nearly said stop what you're doing and go listen to it. Please don't. Please carry on listening to us and then queue up that one to go and
I haven't
to go
heard
and
this
listen
one,
to.
so I did see some of the
It's
clips. But tell me about what were the things you took away from it?
well, I saw the clips, and I got to be honest. I know why they do this in journalism. It just annoys me where they take, I don't know, fractured pieces of conversations and turn each sentence into a news article. So you'll get one headline that says, he says he got into F1 as a kid doing blah, blah, blah. And you click on it and they give you that one answer. And then an hour later, they publish the next story. I'm like, oh, I'm not going to do it like this. I'm just going to go to the source. I'm going to listen to the whole thing. It's about an hour long. He goes through kind of the main things that he hits. And I've tried to avoid too many spoilers, but he goes how he got into car design process as a kid, taking random bits of. He was basically putting together those, glue them together models that you can get, and like you kind of planes. He was doing it with cars, and then he got so bored of what he said was sticking other people's models together that he went and got lots of different bits of scraps of aluminium from his dad's workshop and just started making his own chassis and cars, just to see if he could. He touches on kind of why he still loves his pen and pencil over using CAD. He says, and that's quite an interesting piece. There's a really kind of gut-wrenching piece where he talks about how Senna's death impacted, like, not just the whole team, but you knowing that you're the guy that designed the car, kind of how that whole thought process unfolds. Nice little sort of take on, were they ever worried when they saw the Mercedes with the zero side pod? Did he, like, doubt himself that he looks at that and goes, oh, crumbs, have we like gone totally the wrong direction with ours when you see something like that? So I won't say what he does there. That's a nice little piece. And then he just touches on, while he's really, really super happy with what he's done and loves all the cars that he's designed and blah, 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 he says there is a little bit of emotional regret of not working with Ferrari, Alonso or Hamilton, and tells a few stories about times when he could have done, and apparently Ferrari approached him a number of times. So, and there's quite a lot more in there as well, but it's about an hour long. If you like Adrian Newey, then maybe also go listen to the Vale's Tales that we did on it, and
I
then
was
go
going to
and
say,
listen to
did
the
he
man
talk
himself.
about listening to our Vale's Tales and wanting to come on to
Yeah.
talk?
Well, right at the beginning, he apologized. He said, if you've listened to
Yeah.
Dirty Side of the Track Vale's Tales, you're going to know all this already. But if not, I'll tell you
Oh
myself.
man.
So, yeah.
So Rob, I got a question for you. Shifting gears a little bit here. Last week we talked about rookies and we talked about Logan for a while, and I talked about where I was, how the eye test wasn't working out anymore, and I just felt worried for his seat, and that maybe we'd kind of hyped him up, and we just hadn't seen him keep growing. And it's easy to say that against a Liam, and especially against an Oscar, even
Yep.
before the car was updated. So I also saw the stat we're about to talk about here. I saw it slightly differently, so I had different numbers. I don't know if there was a conversion or something, but the people were in the same order. So why don't we talk about the World Destructors Championship and who has crashed and broken the most cars, at least value worth, so far this year?
Yeah, no, I mean, I put this in here because, like I said, I was kind of giving reasons why he needs to be given another chance and be given a full year like all rookies should in my eyes. But you can't move away from the numbers that you can do a lot of things as a rookie and you can mess up a lot of races and you can finish last or you can retire through mechanical issues. You can do a lot of things and it not be as impactful. But as poor old Mick Schumacher found out,
I was about to say, I
when
thank you
you
for remembering
start
that.
yeah, when you start causing lots of damage in a cost cap era, I think that does start to create a bullseye on your back. So James Vowles came out and did an amazing video this week talking about how they're supporting Sargent. They don't confirm he's there next year, though.
Nope.
Interestingly, in the video, they just say that he's got targets to hit this year and they're all behind him and blah blah blah. But yes, right now he sits at number one of causing $3.9 million of damage from his various crashes. I mean, he has properly binned it a number of times, and every time you see one of those cars crash and disintegrate, you can almost smell the money burning.
Yes, and recognizing that we have, as the American podcast, cheered for Logan the Sergeant, we want him to succeed, but here's the kicker. His 3 point, again, and I saw slightly different numbers on a different stat like this, and again, there was probably conversion, but they were all relatively the same. So the delta to 2, Lance Stroll, it's double. Like if you double Lance's, or it's 50% more of Lance's number, 2.6 million. Holy cow, that's a 50% more damage than Lance's caused, Logan's done, and
Yeah,
into first
yeah.
place. That is intense to think about that, and then it's all fairly condensed after that. So not only is he first, he's in first by a country mile, and you nailed it. I'm happy you said that. Mick Schumacher led this by far and away in his last year in F1.
Yeah.
And as much as you loved him and wanted him to keep his ride when he lost it, we had to think that was a portion of it, having to fix the car
Oh, it has to
continuously.
be.
And
It
for a
has to be.
cash-strapped team, it's not like Williams nor Haas are like, overflowing with money. And in a cost cap era, when you can only spend certain amounts, you can't even go raise extra.
I know, and it's like we didn't understand why Hulk was coming in, but Hulkenberg hasn't set the world alight and scored a fantastic amount of points this season. But what he has done is just be consistent in where he's finishing, and doesn't even feature on this top 10 of the Structures
Nope.
Championships. Right? Neither of the Haas boys do. So, from a forget talent, forget results, but just let's look at bottom line and how much it's costing you to go racing. You've got two drivers that don't put it in the wall very often. So that's my little bit of doubt now for Sargent. I think on talent, I would give him another shot next year, but in a cost cap era when I think he's in the Mick Schumacher where he's one, maybe two at best, crashes away from them just saying we can't afford to
I
have
think
you
you're
keep
right.
going racing. If he can keep his nose clean, he doesn't even have to do anything spectacular and score points or anything. But if he's
No.
got 6 races where he finishes, or if he doesn't finish, it's because of a mechanical failure, I think he gets his seat for next year. But if he puts a few more zeros or whatever on that crash total, then
I think a couple Q2s would help. I think, finishing in the top 15 a couple times without crashing out, being competitive, close-ish to Alex, I think he'll be all right. But anything beyond that, a lot of 20s, a lot of Q3 knockouts, and some crashes, I think he's got to start polishing up his resume.
I agree. And not that I've been doing any preparation for our looming 100th episode in a few weeks' time, but I have. I was listening to the Jacques Villeneuve interview again, and at the end, we asked him about advice for rookies coming in their first season. But this was like 2 years ago, so I don't think Logan had come in at that point, so it wasn't specifically about him, but we were just asking in general rookies. And he said, don't put too much pressure on yourself. Try to relax and enjoy the experience. Don't go and push for that extra corner that you shouldn't get, or try to make up if you lose a bit of time in one lap. Don't instantly try and go and get it back in the next. You've got to just relax. Hit Lane Paul said the same thing when we in his snippet the other week about Logan, that he's putting too much pressure on himself. He needs to just ease off. It's like Lightning McQueen said, slow down to go faster, or whatever it was.
Exactly.
Well, that might have been turn right to go left, but Lightning McQueen was very worldly.
Smooth is fast is the way I think of it. Whenever I've done track days and I've had some people help me instruct in the first couple, it's smooth is fast, and like pushing is not good. So I've always learned now that when I do track days, sometimes not jerking the wheel around and trying to make the corner at the last second or things like that. Just keep the car smooth. You don't scrub off as much speed. Smooth is fast. Yep. Relaxed is good. Logan needs to find that. So one other one about this before we get into some extra thoughts on silly season is, and Rob, you found this one. I love this article. I love this note like more than I should. The weird relationship forming between Red Bull and Honda, who are now dominant, but they're obviously not partners in 2026. Red Bull has doing their own thing, and I think they have Ford helping them with their powertrains, and Honda is moving on to Aston Martin, although if you remember, I thought it might have been McLaren. I predicted that a long time ago. I was wrong before, but I thought they'd stick around. So talk a little bit about this, because it's creating an interesting dynamic for the future, not for today, per se.
It is. They were saying it's kind of like this... It was an interview with Honda Racing Corporation president. Oh, I've been done again here, Brian. You hand it over to me when there's a name that...
Koji Watanabe.
Yes. Red Bull doesn't tell us anything about their engine development, and we don't tell them anything about our development. There is already a kind of information war going on at the moment. At Red Bull, they have to have some knowledge about our current engine, but ultimately we're responsible for development and the whole process. So most of the knowledge is with us until 2025. Hope Red Bull wins everything, but from 2026 we will hopefully be their biggest competitor. So building a complete new engine is a huge challenge, but our goal is to win in this championship and the next era. So it's this whole kind of, I'm not going to show you mine. I know you're not going to show me yours, but we're partners at the moment. It's got to be weird, doesn't it?
It's got to be weird. Do you think they like protect their binders as they walk around the track?
Horner goes to visit the factory. They're like, no, Christian, you can't go in that room. Yeah, that's the 2026 room. Come on, you're not allowed in there.
Like they can't even answer certain questions about this episode, this season's engine. Like, yeah, that's something proprietary.
Yeah, we've got a problem on the in the power unit. Can you help us open up and explore in that? Oh, we'd like to, but we really can't.
Yeah, we're going to need all of you to leave the room first before we do that.
We'll fix it. We won't tell you what we did, but then everyone can come back into the room again.
Oh, man. So we talked a little bit about Logan, and he is, of all the drivers on the grid today, the only seat that is officially done this year. However, and actually, let me step back for 1 second. There were other seats, obviously, that have changed, moved, and been confirmed, but we predicted a very quiet, silly season of 23 after chaos in 22. It's not going out on a large limb to say 24 is going to be absolutely insane. Like, get ready now for the summer of 24, because it's going to get nuts, I would assume, right at or just before summer break next year. The drivers who have a contract through 24, and for anyone newer to F1, just a reminder, people usually get signed during the season for the next year. So it's the only sport I could think of off the top of my head where you finish out a contract knowing you won't be there next year. And you're officially a lame duck. The number, here we go. Checo has contract ending in 24. Fernando Alonso, Lance Stroll, Alex Albon. We already don't know about Sargent, but if they bring him back, I would assume it would be on a short-term deal. Valtteri and Joe. We have Yuki and Daniel. We have both Haas boys as well, Kevin and Nico. We have both Alpine boys, because they signed 2-year deals when they came over. We have Charles and Carlos. Now, I think Charles has an opt-in. He can opt in, I think, to extend. So basically, we have that's almost the whole grid.
I was going to say, it would have been quicker to say who doesn't.
Yeah, exactly. I almost feel like I should do that, because it's Mercedes and Max and McLaren. I might be missing onesie-twosies, but that's about it. So, holy cow, we are going to see the most epic set of silly season conversations starting next summer. I can't wait. I mean, I'm trying to figure out, do I make popcorn right before the summer break and then just sit at the Twitter machine for a few days? What's the plan?
Have you seen I mean, and this is really silly, and I'm not going to put it out here as an early prediction from me because I'm not sure. I can't find any kind of substance in this, but there's been enough Twitter noise around Red Bull going after Valtteri, and I don't know where that. I mean, quality driver. Obviously, shown he could be a number two to a world champion when he did such a good job with Lewis. But yeah, I'm gonna keep focusing on that one because I don't know if it's just rando tweets that someone's just kind of pulled two names out of a hat and said, right, next to partner Max will be. Oh
I
look,
mean,
Logan
if it is
Sargent.
Valtteri, then I have to start buying Red Bull merch too. I mean,
Yeah, it's gonna be a bit like the streaming service situation you're in. You're gonna end.
Oh my god. All right, last thing in the news. I found this on Reddit and somehow in my haste cut off the user who created it. So sorry, uncited anonymous person. But if we did a knockout pool like we did at the Dirty Side, but for the lowest finishing driver of every race, they're out for the rest of the year. So if we started from Bahrain with knockout of every 20th or first DNFing driver, we would be down to 4 because we've had 16 rounds. And the only 4 drivers left who have not DNF'd first or finished last are Max Verstappen, Lando Norris, Lewis Hamilton, and Alex Albon.
Ooh,
Look at
Albon.
Albano in there. Hey now, Albon. So I just thought that was cool. And it's a great grid. It's an Excel chart where basically you just take the last one, knock them out, and keep them out of the next week's results. And so I thought that was neat. So it's a good way to say, I guess, who's been sort of consistent and consistently near the top, because by the last few races, we're knocking out the last person who's still alive. So, and it's 5th and 6th.
Well, this is the problem with F1 getting greedy and putting more races on. If you've only got 20 drivers, but you've got 23, 24 races, then games like this are ruined with like 3 or 4 races to go.
That is the problem. That is the problem. So we'll close the news and hop into a couple videos. I would like to proactively talk to any McLaren fans. You should tune in because we have a lot for you. But here we go, opening the vault. It wouldn't be a video vault if we didn't talk a little bit about Lollipop Man. The video, the channel, he is fantastic, or, could be a woman named Lollipop Man. Every race week, the reviews that you get are great. So the Japanese GP video I thought was excellent. It wasn't my favorite of all time, but it was definitely worth a watch. So if you don't actually literally subscribe to Lollipop Man on YouTube, you should. It's worth your time. Top secret access to mission control during F1 qualifying for the Japanese Grand Prix on the McLaren channel. It's 4 minutes. It's kind of so-so. You don't learn as much when they say top secret access to mission control. I thought we were going to get schematics and pictures of floors and all kinds of amazing stuff. Basically, you see a team of people waking up at midnight because the race is in Japan, going to the office at 1 a.m. to man FP3 and quali, and the strategy engineers and those people at home base. And it's kind of neat to see. So it's a so-so. It's worth it, but you're not going to learn like me, hoping all the secrets were actually revealed. But it's kind of cool to see what the team at the factory does when the rest of the team is at the track. And so I enjoyed it. I don't know, Rob, if you got a chance to see this one, but if you haven't, I'd put it on your list. This is a good one for nerds like us. So, and then one of the goggle games, we've talked about these before, giggles and goofing about with Lando and Oscar. The goggle games came to McLaren. It's 8 minutes on the Formula One channel. It's always a favorite. I enjoy watching these. Just 2 teammates seeing upside down trying to kick a soccer ball. It's a soccer ball past each other. So I went double McLaren, and then I actually tripled on Lando here. But this was my favorite one. I'm closing on the best. Rookies Reunited, catching up with George, Lando, and Alex, the Formula One channel. It's 12 minutes. It is so good. It reminds me of 2019 when they were rookies. F1 put them together, and they made their own presentations why each one should be Rookie of the Year. And like George had PowerPoint, and Lando's drawing on the whiteboard, and like Alex had some stats and like a song, and they were doing this whole thing, and I loved it. And in 2019, I realized, because I don't follow enough Formula 2, and I didn't know enough about these guys before they got to F1. And you realize the friendship they've developed over the years. And then in early 2020, during COVID, for anyone who was into the YouTubes back then, these guys plus Charles were doing a lot of streaming and a lot of Twitch gaming, and it was fun to watch and see their relationship. And I still go back. They had a Sky Sports interview with Natalie that was hilarious. This was great. They are still friends, and they love to make fun of each other a ton. And so, like, they're talking about highs and lows, and then they look at Alex. What about you, lows? And then they even talked about a race in 2021. Where'd you finish? He goes, I wasn't on the grid, mate. I didn't race in F1 in 2021. And Lando's goes, yeah, we can't hear. We don't have enough time for all your problems. And so they just, I mean, like, it is so good. I might go rewatch it. But with that, Rob, anything to add to the video vault this week?
Close the door.
We shall do so. All right. Hopping into the main topic. Bring us in there, my friend.
Yes. So we thought we would take a look at, well, not really the career. It's not a Veil's Tales on Checo. We will talk about his F1 path, but really kind of homing in at life at Red Bull. He's been there. He's in his 4th season there now, I think, or third season.
Third.
Yeah, third season. Third season, and does he deserve a lot of the criticism he's getting this year? Would we keep him for next year? So that's what we thought we would take a look at. Now, he's been around for a lot longer than I actually gave him credit for. When we were putting kind of his little racing stats together, 2011 he came onto the grid for the Sauber F1 team, and he's kind of worked his way Sauber, McLaren, Force India, Racing Point, blah, 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 all the way up, culminating in 2020 when he got his first win at Racing Point, which... well, it might not have been that win that did it, but that gave him the seat at Red Bull. So that's where we want to kind of pick it up, really, and start saying, how has he got on at Red Bull as kind of foil for Max and Brian's favourite driver? So,
I mean, he is one of my favorite drivers. I mean, you joke.
I know he is.
We're both Checo fans, but I am probably a larger Checo fan than you are. I loved watching him at Racing Point and Force India. Same team, just different name after administration. I loved watching him. I love watching him at the little team that could, the cash-strapped team. And he goes out there and he's like, I'll take this bucket of bolts around the track as fast as I can, save the tires, and we can reuse them for next week, and we'll be out of here. And, he'd always finish 7th or 8th or 9th, which was pretty darn good for that team, and I loved it. And he was known as the tire whisperer for a while, and he just, it always felt like he overperformed the car he had. And so Rob and I were talking about this. What does that mean from the past? Is that true? And what are we thinking we're seeing at Red Bull now? So you have a couple stats here, right? You mentioned it, Sauber, then the 1 year at McLaren, which I don't even remember if I'm being honest. And then Force India, which obviously, as I referenced already, went through administration, came back as Racing Point, and then that win in Bahrain. Can I just take a second about the Bahrain win? I remember that distinctly. It was a night race there. It was just chaotic as he won that race because he had no seat. It was very close to the end of the year. I don't think it was the last race. Obviously, Abu Dhabi still was paying for the last race at this point, but it was darn close. It was the COVID year, and he had no drive for the next season. And it was just powerful to watch a guy who had never won in Formula One in all those years. It was 9-10 years. Never had a win. Always been, sort of close, but not quite there. We can talk about his podiums, but just it is. I remember watching this. I remember him crying. He sat on the podium after the ceremony. He sat down and just started crying and thinking to himself, and there was a lot of, all of the weekend warm-ups and then the after-race coverage was always, where will Checo go next year? Will he be like Alex or Esteban, who had to take a year away and kind of come back? And he was saying already, I won't have a drive for next year, doesn't look like, but I'll be back for sure on 24, in 22, I meant to say, and I'll have a seat. And you felt for him, for this guy who maximized what he had. And even when he had that win, Lance was third in that race, I believe. I'm doing this off the top of my head. But I'm pretty sure they had a double podium. And I remember Lawrence and the whole team cheering almost more for Lance because he was sticking around for next year and Checo's heading off. And so they were excited for Checo. I'm not saying they weren't, but it felt like it was as much for Lance as it was for Checo. And Checo had worked his whole career for this win, had no drive for the next season. And I'm sitting there thinking, this is the most epically insane thing I've ever seen. A guy who was getting hotter and hotter as the season ended gets his first win. I actually even told my wife about it. I said, I can't believe he doesn't have a drive for next year. He's one of my favorite drivers. And so when
Yeah,
they
and
signed him at Red Bull, I'm thinking,
well,
great. And
just
then now,
I was gonna say just pause there. So if we look at his career, like you say, he was known for getting maybe above where the car should finish, and that
we
last
think.
season at Racing Point, he came in fourth in the World Drivers' Championship. He came in 125 points, which was well clear of anything he'd done before. He'd always been hovering around in kind of, apart from his first year, in kind of that 10th, 11th, 7th, 8th, 9th type area. But then
Yep.
kind of really it all came together in that final year, which made it even more insane that he didn't have a drive. He's finished fourth in the Drivers' Championship. And then, like you say, the Red Bull move comes around. So now it's like, well, he's obviously going to be the number 2 driver there. But with great power comes great responsibility. Surely he needs to be doubling down and getting more wins, more points, more everything, maybe higher up in the Drivers' Championship than he did previous year. I've got to be honest, that first year, so he gets another win, he gets more podiums, and he gets way more points. He gets 190 versus 125 and repeats fourth in the World Drivers' Championship. So not a disaster of a first year, I don't think, behind the Red Bull.
Also,
But
21, though, also, he helped Max win the Drivers' Championship.
yep,
He was his rear gunner. He fought off Lewis whenever he could. And in Abu Dhabi, he totally sabotaged his own race. He basically waited for Lewis to come around the track and held him up as best he could. And then when Lewis got by, he didn't even give up. He fought back and got ahead of him again on track to slow Lewis down. I recognize what happened at the end of the race, and we don't need to relive that ever again. But, like, you know, he did that for the team, for Max, for Red Bull. And, you know, I looked at it, fourth in the Drivers' Championship. His teammate won. That's pretty darn good. And you would say then in 22, so now we go into the next year, now he finishes third in the Drivers' Championship. He has 2 wins. He has 11 podiums in 22. 11 podiums.
305 points compared to the 190 from the year before. He
That's
closes
mighty.
the gap down. He closes the gap down. In 21, he was 205 and a half. Don't forget the half point. 205 and a half points behind Max. In 2022, he finishes 149 behind him. So massively closes the gap. Over 50 points, reeling Max in. So, you know, Star is on the rise. He's finishes third in the World Drivers' Championship. Huge more points, wins, podiums. You know, why is this guy getting such... The hard rap is really coming from this year.
Right,
Go on,
it
Brian,
is. It is coming from this year. But do you think, as we get into this year, do you think the events of last year, 22, when 21 he put his arms around the team, I'll do whatever you want. I'm your number 2 driver. I will go out and run over Lewis on a moped if I have to before the race. In 22, Monaco happened, right, where some people think he crashed on purpose in qualifying, which caused that chain reaction, and then he led the race and won. Some people think that. It's not proven. There was a whole internal kerfuffle about that. Max's mom calling him out for having an affair on Twitter. It was a big mess. And then at the end of the season, in the sprint race and then the race, I want to say Brazil, Checo needed some points, and Max wouldn't help him, and Checo came out with this.
Yeah, it shows who he really is.
It shows who he really is. And so we sat here on this very pokey podcast, and we said, is there a fraction within the Red Bull team because of this kind of activity? And everyone said, oh, no, well, kumbaya, we're fine. We'll be great for next year. So we enter 23, and let's talk a little bit about this season so far, because you're right. It's coming from this year, but I'm just curious if 22 and those events set up some of the 23.
It could have done. I think what's really, like, let's have a look where we are right now. We've got 6 races left. The problem here is he could have his best ever World Drivers' Championship finish. He could finish second. It's where he currently is at the moment. So you could see that progression. 4th, 3rd, 2nd. I mean, what else can he do, right? However, he actually needs to finish second in every single race this season now in order to get a better points total from last year. And the way his star is on the decline at the moment this season, or so it feels, and we'll dig into it now, is that you wouldn't back him to finish second in every single race, get that points total and secure second in the... I mean, this is assuming Max wins all remaining 6, by the way. I'm kind of almost giving that as a given, right? That's what's going to happen. So, you know, it's... I think what's coming down to the fact that, and it kind of 2 things came together. Listening to the Adrian Newey podcast, they didn't directly ask him, did you design the car for Max? But there's this kind of answer in there where he talks about the process for designing a new chassis, and you do it to optimize performance. You're not even caring who's sitting behind the steering wheel at this point of the design process. You have got new regulations, a new theory to apply, and you just want to prove that you can design a car that's faster than anybody else can design, right? It's where all the designers earn their kudos over their rivals. And Nui absolutely knocked it out of the park this year. His ground effect knowledge from previous seasons really helped him out, and it's just an absolutely phenomenal car. And Max is a phenomenal driver. Okay,
Yes.
great. So those two together, perfect blend, wins the World Drivers' Championship by a mile. But why is the delta between Max and Checo so big this year? Why is it not a dominant 1-2 every single race? Because the car is so good. And even if it plays into the hands of being a little bit more front end twitchy, which Max likes to drive apparently, they can still do setup to make it less like that for Checo. There's something's going on in there, and I don't know, going back to your point, very long-winded, I'm doing a Brian version of an answer here. Is that fracture of the relationship that started breaking down last year mean that both parties are not as interested in keeping this thing alive? And if Checo doesn't believe he's got a future here, is he not putting it in? He just seems to be doing some really weird decision-making. Like last week, dive bombing from like 3 zip codes away to try and come in and take the...
Singapore and Japan. Yeah, I don't know. I do feel like we're getting a little bit of Dr. Phil in here. Like I'm waiting for some 1990s theme music like this. Brian and Rob diagnose the Red Bull relationships. No, that's not what we're trying to do. But I agree. Something happened, and it's not the same. And Checo's qualifying this year has been off, right? I think we would agree, and we didn't go into the quali stats. And then in years prior, it's hard to say what's Checo doing against expectations? And that's what I thought about the whole time we were preparing for this. Against expectations. The point of driving is to win. You play the game to win. And so he has gotten better in the World Drivers' Championship, 4th, 3rd, and currently sits 2nd. He has brought the team wins, their 6th Constructors' Championship this year and last year since he's been there. There's the chance for them to finish 1-2 for the longest time in a while. However, and I'm going to play a couple SAP stats here just into the conversation, and since we're talking about Checo and he's from Mexico, we're going mariachi. SAP stats, Checo conversation edition, Dr. Phil style. It is, as you said already, the delta from Max to Checo, it is humongous. Not only is it humongous for Max and Checo, it's the largest championship lead ever. So IGAF1 podcast, who we had on here a couple weeks ago, came out with some stats. The 177 points after the Japanese Grand Prix is the largest championship lead we've seen. Max currently has a lead that is the largest lead of all time. He is 400 to Checo's 223. You said that. The top 5 spots are all held by Red Bull, and you may think they're all Max, but they're not. Seb was 155 points clear after the Brazilian Grand Prix in 2013. 146 for Max at the end of the year last year to close Abu Dhabi, and 145 for Seb at the USGP also in 2013. So a dominant season by Seb in 13 puts him up there a couple times. Max's 146 from 22 is being eclipsed this year. So Max is running off to the sunset with the championship against Checo. Now, Checo's holding on to 2nd, but is that enough, right? Is he giving him the competition you deserved that he should be doing? And so we went back through the history, and we said, how has Checo done against his teammates? Every time he joins a new team, he finishes 2nd. However, every single time, with the exception of Red Bull, he's always finished 1st every subsequent year. All of them. So Sauber against Kobayashi, he was 2nd in 2011, but then he was 1st ahead of him in 12. The 1 year at 13 in McLaren, which I said I forgot about, he was behind Jensen. But then he goes to Force India, and he's behind Nico Hülkenberg in 2014. And then from then on, he was always 1st in that team, and he was there forever. He beat Hülkenberg in 15 and 16. He beat Ocon in 17 and 18. He beat Stroll in 19 and 20. He can beat his teammates. Max may be the exception because Max is a generational talent. I mean, he's one of those people. He's a world champion who stands on the Mount Rushmore of drivers at this point. So are we getting enough from Checo? And I guess I would say, to summarize, and I'll hand it back to you here, I felt like we were on a good trajectory. We don't expect him to beat Max. At least I don't. 21.
I expect him to.
Yeah.
Well, sorry, 1 second.
Yeah.
Cast your mind back to the beginning of this season.
Yeah.
Where 4 races in, I think I got this right. 4 or 5 races in, it was like 3 wins to Max, 2 to Checo, or whatever it was, because he won too early on. And there might have been some problems for Max in some of those races, but it didn't matter. It would look like it was going to be the Red Bull show this year, where those two were going to exchange wins. And Max, like you say, generational talent, is likely to come out on top in that, and is probably going to get more wins than Checo. But Checo, because he's a great driver, he's in an amazing car, he's going to be the one pushing Max to the finishing line every week, unless they get some DNFs. And that has not happened since those early couple of wins. We kept saying, we were making a joke about it. Every time it was a street track, Checo won. Every time we went back to a normal track, Max won. But fine, that's okay. There's a bit of a ding-dong there, and it means certain tracks, Checo's going to be right up Max's trumpet and push him to the limit. And it just hasn't happened.
It's fallen apart. Yeah.
It's not even that he's the one in second, trundling in 30 seconds behind the others. He's now down in the midfield, having to do big recovery drives every week because he's qualifying sucks. Something, I'm not even going to take credit for this, but just like you earlier, I've forgotten to take the username off Twitter of somebody I saw put this thought out. A point to debate here. If Max took the rest of the season off, would Checo stand a chance at winning the title? Because technically there'd be enough points. If right now Max doesn't turn up for the rest of the year, could Checo, knowing that the World Drivers' title was on the line, win every single race and take the title?
Or great question.
Is it more likely that with Max out of the way, Lewis can actually win more races and take second off Checo?
That is a great question. And I think my answer to this summarizes what is a double-edged sword in all of sport. What have you done for me lately? And what have you done for me lately? Since Miami, Checo has had a different season. That's when he went on that not making it to Q3 streak, 5-race streak, when Max took pole in all of them. And then he had a little bit of a blip back. But you're right, he's fighting through the midfield. He should be, when we have qualified the Red Bull dominance, it's Max, and then it's a bunch of teams in Checo, right? And McLaren has popped to the top of that, but it's McLaren, Mercedes, Ferrari, it was Aston Martin for a little, and Checo. Max was so far different. And in the beginning of the year, it was the Max and Checo show. Like you said, he won in Baku, he won in Saudi Arabia, he finished second in Miami, second in Bahrain. I think he was like fifth in Australia or so. And then Monaco, it fell apart for him, and it fell apart bad. And you remember that qualifying, he was going into turn 1 and it crashed, and they picked the car up, and we saw the floor, and then it was like, oh, Checo, what'd you do? And then since then, it's been a mess. So what have you done for me lately? He has not done a lot for that team. I know they won the Constructors' Championship. I'm not dumb. I love Checo. I'm happy they won that. He's a part of that. But there's an expectation of the second seat at Red Bull, and that you're on a level he's not been on recently. And I know the stats may prove out. Maybe he holds on to second. Maybe it looks okay. Maybe they get a 1-2 in the Drivers' Championship to go with the Constructors' Championship. But right now, most races, it's not even Checo in second place at all. And it's not Max pulling away from Checo. It's Max pulling away from the field, and somewhere out there is Checo in that field in the same car. So unless we find out they've given Checo old bits and bobs from old versions of the car, which we know they're not doing, I'm struggling. And I still root for him. He did finish second a couple times in Italy and Belgium, but he's had more fourths, fifths, and sixths than that. And
yeah,
if I'm Horner, I have to be saying, what have you done for me lately? And the last 10 races have been very mediocre.
And more than that, more than mediocre, just ragged. Like we said, the last couple of races, Japan was a nightmare for him. This is a guy that we just sort of said, I surprised myself by realizing how long he's been around. 2011, 12 years. You couldn't be making mistakes like he made consistently in Singapore and Japan for going for spaces or going for overtakes where there wasn't the space to put that move on. You've got a car that should breeze by people, so just be patient, pick your moment, then just breeze past them and onto the next, onto the next, onto the next. He's getting stuck in traffic so much at the moment where, like you say, yeah, have they put like a little damper or something underneath his accelerator so it doesn't go all the way down to the floor? I mean, I don't have those stats. I'd love to know what his like top speed and kind of just performance he's getting out of that car, because it does feel like such an anomaly that how can you be in the same machinery and be so far away?
Yeah.
And answering the question that I just posed, I would back if Max just packed up his tent and didn't appear for the rest of the season, I'd have more faith in Lewis chasing Checo down for second than Checo wiping the floor with everybody else and winning the World Drivers' Championship.
I hate to say it, I agree.
I know.
I would answer the same question the same way. And I think that tells us everything we need to know, that unless, in my mind, unless he shows some dominance towards the end of this year or into early next year, I don't know why they would keep him beyond 24. Just being completely transparent. They're looking for excellence all the time. They have ditched promising drivers because they weren't delivering. Checo, I think, would find a seat on the grid in a heartbeat if one's available. The problem I have is I just don't think he's doing what Red Bull wants him to be doing. He's not. They want a driver to finish right behind Max every time. They don't want anyone to beat Max, but they want a second place finish by a couple seconds, dominate the field, and they want someone finishing second continuously and not 30 seconds behind. And they're not getting that at all right now.
No, I mean, I do wonder is he the type of driver that needs to be and not doing the whole Dr. Phil thing, but does he need to feel wanted and have that arm around his shoulder? Because like you say, he's gone into teams, proved himself and gone above his teammate in the second year and always been allowed to beat his teammates. So the teams he's been on have maybe not had designated number one, number two drivers, but he's, through performance of alone, I'm the number one driver. Come beat me, I'm going to beat you. And he's done it all the way through his career. Yeah. Then he gets the big, probably money move, but also just, you couldn't say no to Red Bull when they come knocking. Look at that car you're going to let me drive. Has he gone there naively thinking that if he proves himself over a couple of years, he'll be able to earn the Rosberg season?
Right.
No, does he get the Rosberg year where he's allowed to have at it and see if he can challenge Max? And maybe, like you've played those clips, maybe behind the scenes, everyone knows that's not going to happen. While Max is on the grid, because he's so good, everyone else that comes in has to be good support driver and bring home the bacon for Red Bull, but not really upset the apple cart for the title. So I don't know. I think he might need to leave to see the best of Perez again.
I think you're right. And I think unless we see something startling from him the rest of 23 or early in 24, where he wins a bunch of races or is that continuously a couple seconds behind Max, finishing second, bringing home exactly what they want, I don't know why Christian Horner doesn't look elsewhere and find some young talent like a Valtteri, or talent like a Valtteri, or go after a Lando or something like that. And so I don't know. I don't know. I don't know why they wouldn't do that. I don't think they go straight up rookie, because I think we've seen Max eat up too many young drivers in that second seat. I think you need someone with some history behind him, which is kind of what they thought they were getting with Checo. But it feels like you kind of need the mentality of a closer in baseball. Like, you have to be Teflon. You can have one bad race, but you got to always be out there and not care what anyone says and just go throw heat and see what you can do. And he seems to have rabbit ears at times and take some of the stuff to heart, and he gets some kind of lulls going in his performances. So, man, I hope let me put it this way. If he's not at Red Bull in the long term, I hope he finds a drive somewhere where they give him that love. They put the arm around him. And even if it is like for a lower tier team, that he gets a chance to go drive the wheels off that car, because I love watching him do it.
I mean, if the rumors around Lando have got any kind of substance to them, because I'm not quite sure you move Danny Rick back up from AlphaTauri to Red Bull. Let's move ourselves forward a year, and we've both decided we're in charge of Red Bull and Checo's being cut, right? I'm not sure it is Danny Rick that you bring up to come and play second fiddle to Max. I think you might go after a Lando. That might cause you a little bit of issues down the line, because I can see Lando not wanting to be good two-shoes number two driver for too long, but long enough to probably dominate Red Bull a little bit longer. But what about the driver swap? Lando to Red Bull, Checo to McLaren. Now that's a type of team that I could see Checo doing well in.
I don't know. They've built the team around Lando so much there. I think they would just put their arm around Oscar, and now Checo's number two banana there as well.
Number two.
I wasn't thinking McLaren. I was thinking more like Haas or like Williams.
Oh my gosh, you're dropping him right down to the back of the grid. He's talented. He's just not.
Is. But so's K-Mag.
Yeah.
He was already teammates with Hulkenberg once. Why can't we reunite the team?
Yeah.
I don't
No.
know. I don't know. I think it's time to move on. I think our answer is we're both disappointed with what we've seen from Checo this year. We both hope there's more, but we both know his seat is hot for a reason.
Yeah, I think to draw a closure to this one, I think we both agree that the next year is Checo's last year in Red Bull, and don't be surprised. I'm going to go on a limb here. You can either agree with me or not agree with me, but I think next year's his last year at Red Bull. Don't be surprised to see the mid-season cut.
I agree. I actually
Poor
don't know if
Checo.
they'll cut him per se mid-season, but they may sign someone into the seat.
No, I say don't be surprised to see the was it Kvyat, Stappen, switcheroo?
Albon, everybody. I mean, they've done it.
Yeah, they've done it multiple times. Do not be surprised to see that happen next year.
Gas man.
Oh.
I mean, they've done it many times to people.
I know. And on that terrible disappointment,
It's not time to end, though.
no, it's time to put behind our Checo. Put behind our Checo rant. It's not even a rant. It's just we're sad rather than angry, actually.
I know.
Anyway, Qatar. We go racing again next weekend. Okay, we're going to the Losail International Circuit. Okay, 57 laps plus a sprint. This is the bit
It's
that's
not
hurting
French.
my brain.
I think it's Losail. I think you can pronounce
Is it
the
Losail?
L.
I like
It's
to go
not
French.
French
Every now and
All
again.
right. Go for it.
Losail International Circuit.
Oh.
Right, 57 laps. Now, it says the lap record, well, it's just obviously we only held this once, but it says in 2021 it was a 3.343 mile circuit, but this year it'll be a 3.367. Apparently, according to what I can find on the web, it's showing two different measurements. However, every report that I could try, when I tried to go and find the new track layout, it doesn't exist. When I tried to read any article about all the money that was pumped in, all I can find is that in its off year, when Qatar was hosting the World Cup, they spent $1 gazillion upgrading everything but the track layout. Track layout stayed the same.
Even though
So
it's a tiny bit longer.
Yeah, so I'm guessing whoever's put that out there, the revisions have made it a smidge longer. It's a load of rubbish. So, but keep your eye on it this week in the build-up. If any of the coverage mentions a slightly different layout, because I can't see anything on there. But
I actually think so. In recent years, as we've gone to the Middle East for races, the tracks have rarely been done on time. And I don't mean necessarily the concrete and asphalt of the track. I mean like everything around it. If you remember when we went to Jeddah for the first time and they were still finishing like the garage and the whole pit area like the week before, and it was shocking to watch this. They were putting up stands like a couple days ahead of time. I mean, they really barely made it. And Michael Massey had to go like oversee it at the last minute to make sure we were going to have races.
This isn't that, though. This is the polar opposite, because they had no race there last year. They've done...
Well, no. That's what they did, I believe. The race, when they ran in 21, the paint was still drying on the bathrooms and everything around the circuit. It was like, they put up a cardboard cutout of stands and just pretended there were people there because there was nothing structurally ready. Now, they've done everything you would have expected, and I bet you're going to see a different venue behind the track, around the track. I think they finished it and let the paint dry. Those are the upgrades I think we're going to see. The viewing screens we read about, the VIP zones, all of the things you'd expect from a Middle Eastern experience where you go and get treated amazingly and spend a bunch of money. I think we'll see all that now.
Oh, agree. I'm just going to list the things that they've pumped gazillions into. The grandstands can now accommodate 40,000 people. And they've got a new elevated viewing area at Turn 1 called, well, we'll go with your pronunciation, Losail Hill. It's been installed for general admission ticket spectators, and now that brings the overall circuit capacity up to 52,000 compared to the paint-drying 8,000.
8,000?
So, yeah, talk about upgrades. There's 5-star VIP zones, select ones offering pit lane walks and F1 driver talks. Public fan zone has been enlarged, and there's 50 boxes have been introduced, meaning that the circuit now boasts the most boxes of any venue on the F1 calendar. So throw in the money around, build more stuff, build more views, more VIPs, more general... Actually, fair play, more general admission. That elevated section is a general admission section, so they've not just gone after the VIP only. 85 giant viewing screens have been installed around the track, and 180,000 square meters of green space has been created. Well, I guess that's just they actually planted some plants where it was all just concrete because they hadn't finished last time around. But yeah, I think we are going to see a very, very different looking racetrack than, or like you say, behind the racetrack from what we saw when we went there in 2021, which, yeah, that's the only race. So this would be the normal bit where I do the previous winners and constructors and history of everything, and then we would move on to the 2021 race results, or last year's race results, whereas this time around it's all the same thing because it's only been held once. Yep. We had Lewis on pole, Max second, Bottas third. However, both Max and Valtteri got penalties. Max got a 5-place penalty for going through a double yellow flag infringement, so he dropped 5. Valtteri got 3 places for a similar offence, but he was only driving through a single yellow flag, so those guys had to pull down to the back. I don't remember this, but the race had 4 puncher-related retirements as teams tried to go for a one-stop strategy against advice from Pirelli.
I don't remember that either.
I don't remember that, but I look at the DNFs, and it's true. There's a whole bunch of puncher-related retirements on that one, so there we are. Max went out on the last lap on a fresh set of softs to take the fastest lap and prevent Lewis getting the Grand Slam for the weekend.
I do remember that. I am looking forward to it, not just because we've been off for a week. I am looking forward to seeing the track again and kind of letting my opinion form on the track itself. 1 year is not enough time, and I'll say that in advance of Vegas, by the way. 1 year is not enough time to declare a track great or not. I was quick out of the gates and said Miami was crap after last season, and now I take it back a little bit, but I still don't think it's great. So I'm excited to see what Qatar has. It is a sprint weekend, and so for everyone's benefit, remember the layout of this. We get practice and then the qualifying for the race on Friday. We get the sprint shootout, which is the quali for the sprint Saturday morning, followed by, at least our time, followed by the sprint Saturday, and then the race on Sunday. So I got to figure out from a fantasy perspective what chips and buttons to use so I do this right to maximize the sprint weekend. I'm excited to have a sprint weekend back because, again, it was such chaos in Japan, and Max came back, dominated, and we had people running people off track, and it was just a big old mess. I'm looking forward to a race, and if there's tire issues or strategy issues, bring it on. So I am excited for this. I'm excited for the sprint, and as you already put in the notes, I'll steal your thunder here. Max can actually win the World Drivers' Championship in the sprint. Potential upcoming friend of the pod, virtual statman Sean Kelly, has made some notes that it's very rare when a championship's been won on a non-Sunday, and he gave a couple examples where competitors have pulled out of races on a Friday, and then therefore a champion's been crowned. So we've seen other examples of this, but this would be pretty exciting if Max could win the sprint on Saturday, and then to your point, does he show up with the champagne bottle in hand in the cockpit on Sunday and drive around? I mean, it'd be fascinating to see, but I'll go out on an early limb and say Max wins the World Drivers' Championship, but I don't know if it's necessarily Saturday. But by Sunday, I think we'll have crowned our Drivers' Championship to go with our Constructors' Championship. You think so too, Rob, or no?
Yeah, I agree. I think he's going to win both the sprint and the race. There was some noise on social media about, it's not right. The Drivers' Championship shouldn't be able to be won in a sprint race. It makes a farce of the whole title if it can be won then. It's like, hang on a minute. They don't put a sprint race on the last weekend. In fact, they don't put a sprint race in the last couple. So this is only happening on a sprint week because of how ridiculously early Max is winning it. It's right. It's just general mathematics. At some point, Max was going to win it. Does it really matter if it's a Saturday or a Sunday? Other people going on, Max won't get to enjoy it as much because surely it's going to feel different from winning it on a Sunday. Is it? I mean, I would imagine if you get crowned Drivers' Championship and you don't get the trophy anyway until the after-season bash. That's the most ridiculous thing in this sport, I have to say, is you get trophy for every single race win.
And medals, too.
But the World Drivers' Championship trophy is like almost like stuff of legends that people have never even really seen the thing that much because they don't give it out. They don't give it out until the end of the season where they all go along to their little swanky bash in their tuxes and what have you, and by then, it's all gone. All the emotion's over. Oh, here you go. Here's your trophy. Oh, nice. Thanks. I just think in any other sport, the Super Bowl, the Premier League, anything else, people are still in their football kits, and they're still sweating from finishing. And at Wimbledon, the US Open, the trophy for winning the whole thing is given to you then. So why did they do that in F1?
I don't know. That's a great question. Although, can we ask about the celebration? Do you anticipate the red chair room again like we had in Japan last year for Max where he wasn't sure he won or not? Is this for me, mate? And then he sat there, he goes, this is dumb, and left. Do you see that happening again in Qatar? Do you think F1 brings a red chair?
F1's leaning into the Max Verstappen podcasts a little bit now. So they've been doing it on their social media. So maybe there's just a special microphone for him in the podcast room this time. I hope they don't do the stupid chair. That was ridiculous.
That was ridiculous.
I felt bad for him. I was cringing on his behalf. It was just awful. But we will find out next week. We will find out the inevitable, that he will be crowned champion. We'll just find out when he gets crowned champion. And then you and I will regale everybody with our tales of talking about it this time next week.
Looking forward to it, Rob. Thanks. I hope you guys enjoyed the Checo conversation. Let us know on social if you agree that Checo's underperforming the last part of the year, or is he totally safe? We'd love to hear your thoughts. Everyone have a wonderful week. We'll see you after Qatar.